What is up, homies? My name is Felix, and I'm here back again with another video for you all today. I figured that, since it's now October, it's the official spooky season, we need a little bit of Halloween decor in the background. So we got this guy back here. Since it's October, that also means that it's my birthday month, which is pretty swag, pretty dope. So anyways, in this video today, I'm going to be showing you all how to make different types of chords, and basically like the theory behind making chords. And I'm going to be showing you basically like 25, 30 different like types of chords that you can use in your music to kind of spice up your chord progressions and stuff like that. Because I have made a video in the past on how to make chord progressions using like the circle of fifths. So in that video I explained a little bit on how to make chords, but I only really explained how to make like major chords, minor chords. But my main focus for this video is going to be completely chords. I'm going to be showing you guys not just how to make major and minor chords, I'm going to be showing you how to make major 7th chords, major 13th chords, dominant chords, minor 9th chords, suspended chords, augmented chords, all that stuff. We're going to be diving into that today because I know it's really easy to, just turn on the scale highlighting and then just click in whatever chords sound good. But hopefully in this video you'll be able to learn like maybe the names of some of the chords that you're actually creating so that you can just be like, oh, this is a, C major 7th chord. And hopefully I'll be able to boost your music theory knowledge by at least a little percentage point or two. So yeah, before we get into this video, you guys should check out my Instagram and my SoundCloud, which will both be down in the description below, along with a playlist of songs I've produced, my beat store, my Discord, all that stuff. You should go check it out. And yeah, now let's get into this video. Alright, so I am using FL Studio for this video, but however, that's like literally not important at all because I could just show you guys on the piano, but I noticed that some of you guys in my last video, my last chord progression video, saying that you wanted to see it kind of on the screen more. And obviously this is like basically the same as if it were in Ableton, LMS, FL Studio, Logic, whatever it might be. Either way, it's all the same because this is about playing piano, not actually technically about making beats or, about what DAW it is or anything like that. It's just about good old-fashioned tickling the ivories. So the first thing that I should mention is that I am not like a music theory teacher. I'm not a music theory connoisseur or anything like that. A lot of this stuff is just like the way that I think about it in my head. So I'm gonna kind of be giving you guys like a little bit of insight into like what goes on in my mind when I'm making chords or when I'm looking at chords and stuff to remember, what the chord names are and how you form those types of chords and stuff like that. Also, I'm just going to do this video with the assumption that you already know what all the notes in the piano are. That's a very important step for this video, but I assume that all of you probably know already what all the notes are. But if for whatever reason you don't know that, I would recommend watching my last tutorial video on how to make chords and chord progressions. I think like about halfway through I explained like all the different notes in the piano and stuff, just for all the super beginners. But either way, we're gonna get actually started on the chord making now. So basically I have this whole list on my phone. I know you can't really see it, but it's a whole list of different chords, different like popular chords that you probably be using. Alright, so all the chords that I'm gonna be going over today are gonna be variations of C. So I'm just gonna start out at C. C is gonna be my root for everything, and the root is basically the note that you start with. It's like the bass note pretty much of your chord. Alright, so the first and probably the most common chord that we're gonna have out of all of these is gonna be the major chord. And the major chord is gonna sound like this. This is a C major. And now I'm going to click this in so you guys can have a better visual of what it looks like. And the way that you make major chords is kind of like this. You pick really any chord that you want. We're going to do a D major, for example, now. So we click D because that's the root, and then we count 3 spaces in between. So D, and then 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, and then you go to the next one. Bang, and that's your second note in your chord. So once you have that, from that second note, what you want to do is you want to count 2 spaces in between and then place another note. So right here we have F sharp, and now 1, 2 in between, and now A is the third note. So as you can see right here, we have another major chord shape. This is a D major chord, and that is the formula that you're going to use for all major chords. So if I were to take this and move it down to an A sharp, this is going to be an A sharp major chord because the chord shape stays the same for everything. It's a very simple pattern, and you just kind of have to remember that for every major chord. 3 spaces and 2 spaces, 3 spaces and 2 spaces, 3 spaces and 2 spaces. Just, jam that into your memory, and then hopefully you will always remember that that is the formula for making a major chord. So once you have your major chords down, I'm not going to move on to minor chords right away because I think it's important that you guys know the pattern right here, this pattern, actually repeats over and over. So if I wanted to add another note onto here, we would count another 3 spaces. So I'm going to bring this back up to C because I did say that we're we're gonna make everything as a C chord. So if I wanted to add another note onto this C major chord, what we would do is we would just repeat the process again. So count 3 spaces, 1, 2, and 3, and now another note here is B. So now we have a 4th note in this chord. When we just add one more note onto the original 3, this is called a C major 7th chord. And this is a really nice, really pretty sounding chord. As you can hear, it's pretty emotional, it's nice and full. So yeah, C major 7th chords are one of the nicest chords in my opinion. I like them a lot. But however, you might be wondering, like, where does the 7th come from? And I'm gonna explain that portion of this to you right now. So basically, when you're making a major chord, the first note that you start with is the root note. We've already kind of established that. And now the second note from that root note is the major 3rd. And then the note after that, which is this G right here, is a 5th. And now the note after that, which is the B, is a 7th. So that's where the major 7th comes from. And kind of that's something that you just have to remember because that's related to intervals, like note intervals. And I'm not really going to go too deep into that right now. But however, you can just kind of remember it as root note, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and then it goes 9th, 11th, and 13th. So if you want to just think of it as like it's all just odd numbers, you can think of it that way because the root note is basically 1. So yeah, basically these intervals can be very important when you're making other types of chords that we're going to get into as well, because it's basically just going to tell you what note you're going to have in that chord. So if it's like a 5th chord, for example, you know that you're just going to have the root note and then the 5th of whatever the normal chord would be. But we're going to get into that soon, so just hold your horses right quick. Alright, so far we've covered the simple major chord, then we've covered the major 7th chord, and then just to show you an example, this is the major 9th chord right here. So this is a major 9th and it sounds like this. Also a very pretty chord. You'll notice that if you just repeat the 3 spaces, 2 spaces, 3 spaces, 2 spaces pattern, it's pretty easy to just keep adding more notes that sound good with that chord. So this right here is going to be a C major 11th because we'll count 1, 2, 3, and now bang, there's the note right there, C major 11th. And now finally the C major 13th we're going to make by counting another 2 spaces, and now A is a note, and now this is a C major 13th chord. The major 11th and major 13th chords get into a little bit more chaotic or hectic sounding sound. So yeah, I personally like 7th and 9th chords. Alright, so here we are back to a simple major chord. And the next chord on my list is called a 5th chord. And for some of you guitar players out there, you might also know this as a power chord. So basically on guitar, the reason I know this chord is because it's like a simpler way to play a major chord. So instead of playing all 3 notes of the chord, you just play 2 notes. So if this is a 5th chord, you can probably imagine that it's just going to be the root note and the 5th of what the normal C major chord would be. So basically what you can do is you can just play a normal C major chord like this, and then just take out that middle note, and now this is going to be a C power chord. So yeah, once again, you can take the same shape that I'm showing you and put it at any root note and it'll be, you know, that chord. So once again, here we are back at a simple C major chord, simple major chord shape. And you'll notice that most of these chords will start off with a simple major chord or a simple minor chord, and then you just change a few notes, take a few notes out, and then you make a completely different chord that you will know the names of if you know the intervals and you know how to actually make the chord and what the patterns are for making the chords. So yeah, it all kind of stems from the basic major and minor chords. But anyways, the next chord shape that we're going to have is going to be a suspended 4th chord, and in this case, a C suspended 4th. And the way that you make a suspended 4th chord is you literally just take the original basic major chord shape and then you move this middle note up 1. I don't think I said this yet, but if you're moving one note up or one note down, that's going to be called a semitone or a half step. And also it's, you know, one note to the left or the right if you're playing the piano vertically. But yeah, a difference of one note is called a half step or a semitone. Just keep that in mind because I might use those words here and there. And I don't want any of you getting confused by that terminology. So yeah, this right here is a suspended 4th chord and it sounds like this. Kind of a weird sounding chord, a little bit more of like an aggressive, like assertive kind of chord. Alright, so that was the suspended 4th chord, but there's also something called the suspended 2nd chord. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this middle note here again, and we're going to move this one, but instead of moving it up to the 4th, we're going to move it down to the 2nd. And to make this note the 2nd of the chord, you're going to pitch it down 2 semitones. So we're going to take this E right here, and we're just going to move it down 1, and now move it down 2. And now this is going to give us the suspended second chord. And you might be like, oh, well, how am I supposed to remember this because you're moving that middle note twice instead of once like the other suspended chord? But one way that you can kind of look at it is that the suspended fourth, which is this chord right here, has one space in between those top two notes. And now if we do the suspended second chord, this will have one space in between the root note and the second note of the chord. So if you want to look at it that way, you can as well. And this is going to be the suspended second chord. Alright, so moving on now, we have our original major chord shape back, and this one is going to be the added ninth chord. And like I said, the knowledge of the, third, fifth, seventh, ninth intervals are going to come in handy. This is one of those chords where it comes in handy especially. So when you're making a C major ninth chord, you go through your pattern, you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And now this is going to be your C major ninth chord, but however, this is not a C added ninth chord. What you need to do to get a C added ninth chord is get rid of the seventh, because basically the name of the C added ninth chord kind of tells it all. Basically, we just have a regular C major chord, and then we add the ninth. So instead of doing this one right here, which is the seventh, we just add the ninth up here. So if you know what the intervals are already, you can just click it in. But for most people, I think it'll probably be easy to make the C major ninth chord first, and then just get rid of that seventh. And this is going to sound like this. And I actually really like these chords. The add 9 chords are one of my favorites by far. They're super nice sounding, super like emotional and stuff. So this next chord is going to be a sixth chord. And basically what you do with the sixth chord is you take a regular major chord and then you make a major seventh. So we'll count 1, 2, 3 spaces. And now we have this is a major seventh. You're going to bring this top note down 2. So instead of the top note being here, it's going to be right here. And this is going to be a C sixth chord. Alright, so this is the shape that we have here for a sixth chord, and now the next chord we're going to do is a sixth chord, but with an added ninth. And this is going to be very similar to what we did with the other added ninth chord, but except we're just going to take this sixth chord, and then we're just going to add the ninth on top of it. So to get to the ninth chord, we can just count the spaces in between, but just imagine this A is not here. So 1, 2, 3, this is the seventh, and now 1, 2, this is the ninth chord. And then we can get rid of the seventh because you don't need that, and then we're just going to drag this sixth back in. And now this is a C6 add 9 chord. So if you recognize like kind of the pattern that we have going on so far, what you can do is take the different intervals and you can do like an added 11th chord if you want to. So I can just make a C6 added 11 chord if I want, and it works the same way as the 9th, except for you just add the 11th on top of it instead. So yeah, pretty simple formula, and you can do that as much as you want. You can do like a C major 7th with an add 13 on it if you want to. So yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for the major section of the chords, and now I'm going to move on to the minor section, and the minor section we're probably going to fly through a little bit quicker because it's kind of the same exact thing except for with just a slight change in the pattern in the way that you make the chords. And now I'm going to show you guys how to make just a simple C minor chord. So a C minor chord is going to sound like this. As you can hear, it's much more somber, a lot sadder sounding chord. So if we were to take that, what I just played, and put it in here, it would look like this. And right off the bat, you might notice that there's also a pattern going on here as well, but it's flip-flopped from the major. So for minor chords and minor 7th chords, minor 9th chords, minor 13th chords, it's basically the exact same thing, except for you go 2 spaces and then 3 spaces and then 2 spaces and 3 spaces. And the intervals for your major and minor basically work the exact same way as well. If you have just the basic major chord and you're building onto it and making 7th and 9ths, it's just going to be the second note is the third note is the 5th, and then the 4th note is the 7th, and then so on and so forth, just the same way that we had with our basic major chord. So right here we have a C minor 7th chord, which sounds like this. If we just continue with the pattern, we have 2, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1, 2, 3, and then boom. So now this is going to be our C minor 9th chord. And just like with the major chords, we can continue going on and on with this. So we can go here, do 2, and this is going to be our C minor 11th chord. And now this is going to be our C minor 13th chord. So now also, just to get it out of the way, because we already pretty much did it, we have the added 9th chords and, like added 11th and added 13s if you want to as well. And the way that we do that is essentially the same exact thing as we did with the major chords. So we can just create a 7th chord and then a 9th chord like this. And now we can just get rid of the 7th. And now this right here will be a C minor add 9 chord. which is a pretty moody sounding chord, and it's also another one of my favorite chord shapes. So now also similar with major chords, inside of the minor section we're going to have a minor sixth. So this is very similar to how we had the sixth chords or major sixth chords or whatever you want to call it. This is basically going to be the same procedure. So we're going to make a seventh chord by doing the pattern 2 spaces, 3 spaces, and now 2 spaces again. And now here we have a C minor seventh chord, and to get the sixth, we just take this top note and we bring it down 1 semitone. And now this is going to be the minor sixth shape. So this right here will be a C minor sixth. So yeah, that's the minor sixth chord, and now we're going to have a minor sixth added ninth chord, which again is super similar to what I showed you guys before with the major chords. We can just pretend like this sixth isn't here, and now we can just make a quick little minor ninth chord by doing the pattern 2, 3, 2, 3. And now we can get rid of this seventh and now bring this back in. So now we're going to have the minor sixth chord, but with an added ninth on top of it, like this. So now kind of the next little weird variation we have with the minor chords is going to be a minor flat sixth chord, which is a really weird thing and it might be kind of confusing for you, but I'm going to explain how it works here. So basically we're going to take this, which is the sixth right here, and we're just going to make it flat. So if you have your keyboard vertically, if you're inside of a DAW or something, if you're moving down, what you're doing is you're flattening the note, and then if you're moving up, what you're doing is you're sharpening the note. And if you're on the keys actually playing the keyboard, if you're moving to the left, you're flattening the note, but if you're moving to the right, you're sharpening the note. But just think of it like you have a C note, for example, and then to the right on the piano, that is a C sharp, so that's sharpened. And then if you have like a D, for example, and if you move 1 half step to the left, that's going to be a D flat. But anyways, we're just going to get back to this chord, which is the minor flat sixth chord. And the minor flat sixth chord, you're going to take the sixth and you're just going to flatten it. So like I said, if you're moving down or you're moving to the left, you're flattening the note. So we're going to take this sixth and just flatten it. And now this is going to be a C minor flat sixth chord. Alright, so the next chord that's on my list for the minor section is kind of building off of the last chord that we just did, and this is going to be a minor seventh flat fifth chord. So the way that we're going to do this, as you might be able to already know by some of the patterns that you've been seeing, we're going to make a minor seventh chord. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and now 1, 2. This is a seventh, and now we're going to take the fifth, which is this one right here, and we're going to flatten it like this. And now we have our minor seventh flat fifth chord, and it's going to sound like this. Kind of a bit more spooky sounding, but I do actually like that chord. Alright, so that does it for the minor section, and now we're going to move on to dominant chords. So the first chord we're going to have is a dominant seventh chord. You pretty much just make a major chord. So 1, 2, 3, and now 1, 2. This is our major chord, so we have a C major. And now we're going to make a seventh because it's a dominant seventh chord. So 1, 2, 3. And now with dominant seventh chords, what you do is you take that top note and you just flatten it. So we're going to take this and boop, flatten it, and now we have a dominant seventh chord. So as you may or may not have guessed, the next set of chords is basically going to be the exact same as minor and major. We're going to have the 9th chord, the 11th chord, and the 13th chord. And we're going to skip 7th because this right here is the dominant 7th chord. So for these chords, you can just call them 9th or 7th or 11th or 13th. If you want to, you can also just say dominant 7th, dominant 9th, dominant 11th, but that's kind of a mouthful. So I think most of the time people will just say 9th or 11th. So yeah, anyways, the way that you're going to make the 9th and the 11th and the 13th is literally the exact same way as you would do with a major chord. So we can literally just change this right here into a major 7th chord, and now we can do the pattern. So 3, 2, 3, 2, and now this is going to be our 9th. We're going to take that 7th and put it down the way that we had it before. So this is going to be our C dominant 9th chord, and now this is going to be our dominant 11th, and now our dominant 13th. And just one thing to keep in mind on these chords is to not mix up the pattern. So as you can see right here, it's like, oh wait, the pattern kind of switches up. It's like 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, which is weird. But that's only because we moved that 7th. If we move this 7th back, the pattern will fix itself again. So 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. As you can see, you just have to make sure you pay really close attention to that original major pattern of 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. And just don't let yourself get tripped up by the flattened 7th right here. Alright, so the next chord on my list is going to be a dominant 7th with a suspended 4th. And if you remember way back in the day, when we did the suspended 4th for the major chords, we're basically just going to do the exact same thing here. We're going to take the 3rd and we're just going to put it up 1 semitone. And now we're going to have a C dominant 7th suspended 4th chord, which is quite a mouthful. And now the other chord on my list is very, very similar to this. It's just going to be a dominant ninth with a suspended fourth. And at this point, you'll probably know how to figure that out because basically we can just reset this to the way that we originally had it as the original C major chord, like this. And now we'll make the ninth because we need a ninth, right? So 1, 2. Now we have our ninth. And now we can put the notes back. So we have our ninth, and now we think, what can we do to make it into a suspended fourth? We just take the third, move it up one semitone, and now we need it to be dominant, so we take the seventh and we flatten it. So take this, and boom. And now we're gonna have our C ninth with a suspended fourth chord. And then that same process would also apply to if you wanted to do an 11th with a suspended fourth, or if you wanted to do a 13th with a suspended fourth, or something along those lines. At this point, you probably have the knowledge that you pretty much need to create all of those different types of chords. So now the last chord on my list is going to be a diminished chord, and honestly this kind of belongs more in the minor section, but I do also have another chord that I want to add to it that goes a little bit hand in hand with this one. So the diminished chord is going to start off just like a C minor chord or a minor chord. You're just going to do 2 spaces, and then a normal minor chord would be 1, 2, 3 spaces, and then the note here, but a diminished chord is just 2 spaces and 2 spaces. So you're going to do this, and now it's going to have kind of a very ugly sounding chord. So yeah, that's how you make diminished chords. And now I'm going to show you the last one that I'm adding to this, which is an augmented chord. And this is very similar. This is basically just like the major version of what I just did. So like we know, if you go to make a regular C major chord or a major chord, you just do 1, 2, 3 spaces. And then the fifth of this chord would be 1, 2 spaces, like that. But an augmented chord, you just take this top note and you go boom. I just move it up 1/2 step. So this one, the augmented chords are 3 spaces and then 3 spaces, very similar to the way the diminished chord was 2 spaces and 2 spaces. So this is a C augmented chord. Also sounds very gross and disgusting. So yeah, honestly, that's gonna do it for me here in this video. I hope you guys were able to learn a thing or two. This is not even like anywhere near all the chords that you could possibly play on the piano. There's literally like a million billion different chord combinations that you could possibly do, but I just figured this video would kind of give you guys some help on like the basics of making like a bunch of different chords, and hopefully you'll be able to make like a ton more chords than you were able to before. But hopefully I was able to broaden your horizons a little bit. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you were able to learn a thing or two. I hope I was able to provide you with some valuable information and make your chords sound super dope and swag now. So yeah, make sure you guys follow my Instagram and my SoundCloud. Those will both be down in the description below, along with my songs I produce, my beat store, my Discord, all that stuff. Go check it out, and I will see you guys next time.